We gather today in the name of call to action for East, West, South, and North Baltimore. Prayerfully, we're able to facilitate cross-pollination of capacity building during this retreat. Personally, I'm eager to contribute towards changing the paradigm of Baltimore. We can agree that Baltimore is in a state of emergency with over 320 murders looking to break record highs. Although this is true, it is bodies in this room and the tentacles they have that have the ability to change the trajectory of Baltimore forever. And for that, Baltimore is in a better shape. So we know that the parts are greater than the sum. But too many of our youth are being removed from the equation. We must now use our resources to empower each other and build a new legacy for our communities. Walking away, I inspire for us to be three things. One, vulnerable. Vulnerable enough that you can walk away with something. Vulnerable enough that you can put away something. Vulnerable enough to remove barriers and a reason not to. Removing barriers and reasons not to. Two, inspiring. Be inspiring. As a great mentor says, inspire to inspire. Deliver and conduct yourself with excellence. Know that you will be the seed that will inspire the mind that will change Baltimore. Three, be a finisher. Too many times in my life, I myself and others in my life have missed out on greatness because of what we are scared to finish. So let promise to ourselves and the city and to each other, we will finish the process. We will meet deadlines. We will miss sleep. We will set that reminder in our smartphone. And we will ask for help. We will finish the process, Baltimore. Thank you all for coming. Thank you all for being here. Thank you all for being prepared. And without further ado, Mr. World.
First of all, good morning. Thank you all for coming. We need your help. The city needs your help. I was born and raised in Baltimore. I grew up in Pigtown. I have a stake in Baltimore. I'm probably not leaving this department until we succeed. So hopefully we got to succeed within the next two or 3 years. But no, it's a city that I have a great deal of stake in. My kids grew up here. And like I said, I grew up here. I go back through Baltimore, through Pigtown all the time, and just to look around and see the places where I grew up. It's changed a great deal, but it also hasn't changed a great deal. So, but the thing that I want to talk to you about today is we are excited in the police department and in the city because we started an initiative about 30 days ago now, probably 32 days ago, November 1st, called the Violence Reduction Initiative. And what we did is every morning, 8 a.m., all the city heads, the department heads, as well as 5 majors from 5 different districts where the VRI initiative is in place, meet in the 7th floor of headquarters, and we go over what needs to be done that day, what was done yesterday, what worked, what didn't work. So what that's done is we've got Department of Transportation, Fire Department, Police Department, and every other a person, basically a decision maker for that department. So if we need cars removed from a neighborhood to make a neighborhood look better, we did that up on Fairwood, 5200 Fairwood. Outstanding. Just the little things from all the city agencies, and the mayor and the police commissioner put this together so that the police department and everyone else is working together to make this city safer. And what we've done in the first time probably all year, we had, in the month of November, we had a 33% reduction in homicides. Although we lost 20 young men, most of them young black men, we lost 20 young men to violence. It's 20 more than we should lose, but it is progress compared to what we've done the previous 10 months. We also had 6 less non-fatal shootings, which was 13%. And we were trending up in both of those categories, as was already mentioned. Unfortunately, the police department seems to get judged on one number, which is our homicide rate, which we should be judged greatly on that. But we've also made great strides just in this month, and I attribute it to everybody in the city working together. And the more people we can bring on board, which are you guys, and we can't thank you enough for coming out, especially for putting 2 days into this and getting more eyes on the city with suggestions, because we can't figure out all the answers. We don't have all the answers, so the more eyes and ears we put out there, the more suggestions we have, the better off we're going to be. But just in the last 28 days, we've had, for the first time probably all year, a 17% reduction in violent crime, 16% in property crime, and an overall reduction of 16% in all Part 1 crime categories, which is murder, rape, robbery, aggravated assault, burglary, stolen autos, which that's a great success, but we got a heck of a long way to go. We can't get there without your help. We won't get there without your help. So with that said, you want me to turn over questions? Or yeah. Anyone has any questions about any other initiatives or anything that we're going to be doing moving forward? Yep. Yes, ma'am. Well, what we have, the theory is in the police department for the longest time, if we can, our 2 most violent districts probably for the last 30 years have been the Eastern and the Western. And that's pretty much holding true again this year. The Eastern has, I believe, 52 of the 320 homicides, and the Western, I believe, has 46. So what we did in the beginning of November, the VRI zones, there are 5 of them. One of them is in the Central, one of them is in the Eastern, one is in the Northwest, one is in the Western, and one is in the Southwest. And the reason we only picked 5 is because if we try to get one in each district, we're going to spread ourselves too thin. So what we've done is we picked those 5 districts, which are the 5 most violent parts of the city year to date. And we've loaded up as much resources as we can with the police department, fire department, all those other agencies to see if we can make a reduction. All 4 of those 5 zones have been reduced with violence. The only one that's even right now is the Northwest, but all the rest of them we had a violent reduction. And then we also have experienced, Deputy Commissioner D'Souza was away for a year at a IACP fellowship. He came back with some great ideas that other police departments have used throughout the country. So we put one of those in place about 2 weeks ago in the Western District. And what we found out is, though, we put a lot of resources in the Western District, it had an effect throughout the entire city, because it's no longer, criminals are no longer staying on East Side, West Side. The criminals are traveling. We're finding criminals from the Western over in the Eastern, the Northwest, and everywhere else. And the biggest thing that has already been mentioned briefly, slightly, was our youth. We're losing our youth. And I'll give you a perfect example. Last week, we locked up a 14-year-old kid in the same block twice in the same week with 2 separate handguns. 14 years old. I mean, I was playing baseball and doing goofy stuff as a 14-year-old kid, and this young man's out there feels he has to carry a gun for whatever reason. And we need to get the youth back. So that's the big focus. We're trying to do as much stuff. I don't know if you saw on the news, or in the paper. We just started, Chief Robinson, which is my boss, we started the Youth Football League Friday night. We made each district come up with a flag football team of kids from 14 to 18 that are out there playing flag football. So we did their first games over Friday night. They play it every Friday night at 6, 7, 8, and 9. There's 9 districts, so one team gets a bye each week. We had a basketball program. We'll probably do something with baseball. I used to play baseball for a long time. I still play, so I lead the badges for baseball, so I'll be more of a springtime. I don't like the cold, so I'm more of a springtime athlete. So we're trying to do as much as we can to help, but we need you guys' help, and the first step is having you here, taking the time out of your busy schedule to help us. Somebody else. Yes, sir.
Yeah, just a quick question. Patrol.
Mm-hmm.
You know that the patrol numbers are down. What is the strategy behind increasing the number of officers?
Well, right now, what we have is, for the first time in probably 2 or 3 years, we've hired more people than we lost. So right now, currently, we did have 180 people in the police academy. The mayor has unfrozen positions for us to fill. We just haven't been able to fill them yet because we're working to get our department back up to 3,000 officers. But there were 180 in the academy. 42 of them just came out in field training. There's 33 of them that just finished their field training, and what we did with those 33 is we split them up into 4 different teams of foot officers that were going to move strategically around the city. So districts that don't usually get a lot of love with patrol or other initiatives because they're not as high in violence, you're going to start seeing the foot officers. They were up on, I know they were up on York Road. They've been up on Bel Air Road, which is my baby. I was a Northeast commander for 3.5 years, so that Bel Air Road corridor probably gave me about 150 gray hairs. But we're doing different strategies with these young men. The problem, young men and women, the part of the problem is when we hire somebody, it takes about a year for them to officially get out on the street and make an impact. So it's going to take a while, but with the mayor releasing those positions and supporting us a great deal, and the police commissioner, we've got a really good staff hiring people, and we got a good training staff. So we're getting better trained, more trained officers.
Second question, was I know that the Councilman Brandon Scott and a few others have made a motion to, I believe it's a bill that was passed, to encourage officers to move back to the city. How is the police department supporting that in terms to get officers to be more connected to the communities that they serve?
Well, what's happened, I know I think they passed the tax credit as well, but what we've done in the department, we started a take-home vehicle program. So right now, 1 officer in every district has a take-home vehicle. The parameters of that is you must live in the city, and you have to park the car on the street. If you live in a garage or you have a garage, we want the car parked on the street because we want visibility. And the mayor wants to continue that program and actually grow it. We just have to, what we want to do is we want to have those 9 officers have the cars and encourage more officers to come into the city, because that's a big incentive. If you have a vehicle, you go back and forth, you get the gas, and it saves a great deal of money. Plus, you're back in the city helping your community. So those 9 officers love it. And some of the other officers are, how can I get a take-home car? Well, you got to live in the city. But we do have a good number of officers. I think about 30% of the ones that are in the academy right now live in the city.
This is the last question I'll include is with the credibility. One would suggest that there's been credibility loss with everything that's happened with the city case. What is the plans to begin to restore the credibility of both the city police officers back to the community?
Well, I think that's an ongoing plan from a couple years ago. The unrest of 2015 is we're still battling the effects of that. And the only thing we can do is just go out and keep putting the positive stuff out there that the police department does. And it'll change. It goes in waves. And it's not just Baltimore, it's throughout the country. And we'll change that. Our attitudes and the way our officers treat the people will change. But we didn't get here overnight, and we're not going to get out of it overnight. But the officers are doing an outstanding job down on the street level to change things. Yes, sir.
Quick question. You spoke of the 14-year-old young man. What will be done specifically? what's some ideas that will be done to re-engage a young person like that you know you caught twice, one time, twice on the same block with 2 different handguns? What would be a plan for
the first thing we have to do is see there's a problem at home. It's not a problem with the police department. We're doing our job, but for some reason, that young man didn't have anyone to probably tell him that's wrong. So it goes back to the home, and the saying is, it takes a village to raise a child. In Baltimore, it takes a neighborhood. When I grew up, I was more afraid of my neighbors than I was afraid of the police, because they would smack me and tell my mother and tell my father, and I didn't want my father coming after me. So, and probably most of you were the same way. You didn't want to get your butt spanked or anything, but we need to find out where we messed up. And I mean us as a community messed up with that young man. Is he not going to school? What's going on in his household? Does he need help from other city agencies to get him back on track? Is there something we can do to get him a job? Is there something, and we'll try that. Like I know you guys have all seen the squeegee kids. We've gotten a couple of those kids jobs, businesses, to try to get them off of that, because it's dangerous, number one. They're running in and out of traffic. But with that young man, we have to look. The state's attorney has diversion programs that we can get them into different programs, because arresting that kid twice probably doesn't really have an effect on him. So the arrest process for us, that's about the best that we can do, is arrest and try to get him, and maybe an officer can try to mentor him. But you got to find what the root of the problem is, and then fix that to get him back on track. Because he's not lost. He's lost for a little bit, but he can come back. He's only 14 years old. Hopefully, he's got a long life ahead of him. Yes, sir.
Do you think that it should be a requirement for the cadets to have some community service hours, so that when they become officers, they won't have to go through training again, because they're already in the beginning has got community service and been able to deal with the neighborhoods?
Well, what we are doing in the academy, and we never used to do this, believe it or not, is, and you may laugh when I tell you, but we give them classes on how to walk foot. It sounds kind of funny, but it's not, because I can tell my officers to go out and walk foot, but then if I watch them, what usually happens if I have 2 officers out walking foot? No, well, even if they're not sitting in their car, they're standing together talking to each other. So what I did in the Northeast, and I tried this and it worked a lot, is I would tell them, first I gave them vague orders. We have a mandate that we have to walk foot 30 minutes a day for your shift. So I'd tell them to go out and walk foot. And I gave them a form to fill out. Well, the mistake I made is I put stats on the form. How many people how many car stops, how many field interviews. So they thought that that's what I wanted. So what I did is I took that away. I took all the stats off and I gave them the sheet again, had to fill out where they walked and what they did. Well, there's no stats. I don't care about stats. Go out and walk foot and talk to people. That's all you have to do. You don't have to, do any 1029s, no warrant checks, no car stops, nothing. I just want you to go out and talk to people. Because if you look at the officers are outstanding, but these kids, if you look at them, these kids are young. I mean, they're 22, 28, 29 years old, and a lot of them communicate with these things. My son's the same way. He plays those video games. So we had to teach them to go out and walk foot and engage the community. And that's what we want them to do. So when the next step for that is when they come out and they go into field training, then we break them out into those 4 groups and we make them walk foot again for 90 days. So they are walking in pairs, but they're out engaging the community walking foot. So that has been a huge success, and that's going to continue. And for the first time in a long time, what's going to happen is when this next class finishes their 90 days of foot, the class after that comes right out behind them. And it's going to continue like that because we got enough classes in the academy that there won't be that break. So we'll be moving the foot people throughout the city. Yes, sir.
Is there any word on bringing back the auxiliary officers?
We still have auxiliary officers. Not that many, but we do. We do still have them in the department, and they're used for different things, but we have them. We move them around the city strategically when we need them. Somebody back there had a question, I thought. Yes, sir.
One of the points that you made was how to get some of the literally people in this room. Some of these people are working with youth in juvenile services. Besides, and that's, you know, they have literally that's part of the job, but also just as they're doing, and how to make the connections where there are people who can relate in that neighborhood for doing those things. I think one of the things that the group's working on is how everybody has a positive person in their lives. And the positive person for that 14-year-old who's gotten picked up twice in 1 week with guns, maybe a slightly different person. I'm not the person for that. But we have people in the room and represented in the room. So I think, again, as we're moving forward, how do we facilitate, you know, the discussions so that the assets of, and it's not that the police don't know the people at all, but I think it's real priorities. You're saying everybody wants to stop the violence, and have some of those folks, you know, how do we move together so we can expedite access to that young person.
So, let me address that. First, let me say thank you.
You're welcome, ma'am.
A couple of things that I'd like to address. First, thank you all for being in the room. This is important. And coming up with solutions is important. But more importantly, for me, it's building capacity among the groups that are in this room who have capacity and who have capability, but may not have the funding to expand the capacity. And I think part of what you'll hear about today is how do you go about the business of doing that. So what we've done is, through this particular effort, we have $250,000 a year for the next 2 years to build capacity among the groups that are in this room. And so there are groups that are engaged in this effort, and we want some of the groups that are already engaged, for like the Nation of Islam, for example, who are really engaged in this work. And so we're working with them, and we'll work with others. And so there is another program that I'm very much interested in, and that is ROCA. And as you well know, ROCA is a program focused on 17 to 24-year-olds who have come in contact with the criminal justice system and will take them as young as 16. Tried, true, proven, has worked in other states. And as many of you may or may not know, before I even was sworn in, the governor of this state made a commitment to $10 million for ROCA so that we could focus on just that population. Somehow he's forgotten what ROCA is and doesn't remember it, but let me just say that the philanthropic community had already, with that particular commitment, raised another $4 million for that $3 million something for that particular project. It is important that we have that. And then one of the things that you'll hear that we're doing is expanding our youth and juvenile program, which someone in this room will be helping us to facilitate, because we need to make that connection between not just the police department, but the juvenile services and the schools. You know, all of us have to be engaged in this work. You know, no one group can do it, no one organization can do it. What I want police to do is to engage with the community. But what we also want them to do, and which we've added to the training of the police officers, is cultural diversity. How do you communicate in such a way that you don't instill fear in people in the communities and the neighborhoods? Because, you know, people in the neighborhoods and communities, you know, have probably the best sense of what's going on in those neighborhoods and communities. So building that relationship is really important. And so that's what we want our police officers to do. But let me go back, because I need to give you all just some information in terms of why we're here, why we got here, and what I hope comes out of this. I think early on, many of you all answered the call to action. And I tell folks, you know, I never do one thing at a time. I came in here with a clear vision of how to move the city forward. But so I began to analyze every single department, every single agency, you know, how the city operates, you know, not just on paper, but how do you actually function? And so just early on, I never forget my first day in City Hall. I don't know if I shared this with you all before, but you know, there was a big meeting in a room, and I wandered into the room. It was my first day. You know, a lot of people sitting around the table. So I see all these people sitting around the table. I'm like, oh, and then the city solicitor at that time jumped up, walked over to me, said, if you walk in, somebody's got to leave. And I'm thinking, well, maybe somebody should leave. But I left. And so then the next week, we have a Board of Estimates meeting, and they say page 1 through 79 is routine. I said, well, how could it be routine? I just got here. Nothing's routine. So I made them go through page 1 through 79, pulled stuff off of this gender. I don't understand this. No WBE, MBE on this. So that meeting that was happening that particular day was the pre-Board of Estimates meeting, which I never missed. And no mayor has ever chaired that meeting. You're supposed to chair that meeting because that's where contracts and so forth take place. And that's also where you can check and say, well, where is the African American participation on this contract? Where is the Latino participation on this contract? That was not being followed through on a regular basis. I can tell you that by virtue of my own experience as the current mayor of this city. And then I walk into another meeting. It's the finance board meeting. And I walk in and everybody's head turns. So I said to Joan Pratt afterwards, who's been the comptroller for 21 years, I said, Joan, what's the big deal? She said, girl, in the 21 years that I've sat in this meeting, no mayor has ever sat in this meeting. And let me just tell you, just an example of last week. When I went to the finance board meeting last week, these are the kinds of things that happen. Bond bills up and coming, $51 million for community and economic development, $6 million for housing, for moderate and low-income housing, $4 million, $6 million. And this is what the mayor gets to do. Can you move $4 million from out of that budget, put it over here? Let's move, how long has it been, affordable housing been at $6 million? Oh, the last couple of years. Well, give me $4 million out of that and put it over here. Let's make that $10 million. Everybody okay with that? Can I get a motion? Joan says motion. Can I get a second? Sure. Okay, thanks. But that's the kind of, that is the power of the mayor. And you're supposed to be in those rooms or those things don't take place. And so the reason that this is important, as I said early on, call to action. Can't do this work by ourselves. No way. Police can't do it. And then I analyzed the police department. In 1998, they started putting computers in police cars. In Montgomery County, in Prince George's County, not here. So I go to the governor, I said, I need $2 million to put computers in cars. We got that. All of our police officers are now outfitted with body cameras. We have that. Gunshot detection, New York City, Baltimore, Boston, Philadelphia, California, where you see violence has dropped at its lowest, all in those cities, not in Baltimore. License plate readers, just a few, not enough in Baltimore. Not enough lighting, not enough technology. Police officers ought to be able to access and have information at their fingertips. So I want you to know this morning I applied for a $5 million grant from the Bloomberg Philanthropies, and as some of you may or may not know, we got that $5 million to implement. What I tell folks in the city, and this is what I have to say to agencies, I don't ask you what the budget says. I say, tell me what we need. Because if you tell me what we need, then I'll go out and get it. If you tell me that homelessness, reducing homelessness in the city is going to cost us $350 million, then I got to figure out where that is, because I know that the city budget doesn't have it. If you tell me that fixing every boarded up house in the city is going to cost us $850 million, almost $1 billion, then we got to figure out what's the plan to get that work done. And that kind of attention, in my own opinion, has not been paid. We have authorized, at our highest point, we had 3,300 police officers on the street in the police department. We are now authorized at 2,800. 200, and for 2 years, police were frozen. Police positions were frozen. But what people don't understand is that you have an attrition rate. You know, people leaving, retiring, saying, I'm done. 25 police officers, 20 to 25 police officers a month. So now you're down 300 a year, 600. So that's a problem. And so I said, unfreeze police positions, let's hire, but make sure we're training. Let's look at getting more African Americans and people who live in our neighborhoods, in our communities, into the police department. What kind of incentives can we put in place? And so we've done those things, but making sure that, and this is why I signed the consent decree, and the oversight committees, because we have to make sure that we're eyes and ears in the community to make sure that policing is done in the way that our communities will be served best. We've got a lot of work to do. I think that you all are important as we engage in moving this city forward, but it takes all of us, and that's what the call to action was about. Come help us. We're expanding Safe Streets. $2.4 million currently in the budget for Safe Streets, for 4 different areas. My goal is, I said, every city, every community deserves a safe street. You know, to say that you're focused on one area and not focused on the others, to me, is leaving folks vulnerable. So we want to expand Safe Streets. So again, there are groups and organizations in here who have capacity to run a Safe Streets program. At $500,000 a year, multiply, that's what we're looking at. So that's about another $3 million for safe streets. ROCA, the state pulled out, but last week, as of last night, I raised $6.6 million in 1 week, in less than a week, because I intend to have what this city needs. Nobody can stop me from doing what we need to do. If I have to go outside of the city to get it, if I got to go to the business community to get it. You know, when I went to meet with the GBC, they said, they called me in. And so, don't call me in and don't think I don't have a plan. So they called me in, they want to tell me about how violent the city is and how concerned I should be and what I should be doing. I think that's what they were going to share with me. And then they said, now, so let us start this meeting. I said, well, here's how we'll start. Let me bring you up to date in terms of what we need, where we are, how we got to where we are, and more importantly, what I need, because I've come with an ask. And the ask is for $10 million, and part of it is expanding safe streets, and the $6.6 million, because the city had made another $3.4 million commitment to ROCA. And so I walked out of that meeting with $4 million and have since raised another 2.6 to complete the ROCA funding. And my next ask is with the philanthropic community and some other business folks to expand ROCA, because the city doesn't have it. The budget does not hold it. And so that means, as a leader of the city, you better go find it. And that's what I intend to do. But I want to grow the groups and organizations in here to be able to take advantage of those opportunities that will come about that, again, in my opinion, will help to make our city safe. So I want to say thank you, first of all, to all of you all for being in this room. And I'm excited about the work that you all currently do, but more importantly, excited about the work that you'll do in the future. Thank you.